We done?
Not yet. No, Malcolm.
Well, keep talking.
Yeah, now as we introduce any new people that's recently been in the club. Okay, now why don't you stand up? I didn't think so. Introduce yourself and where are you from?
Okay, well, I'm David Chen. I'm with the 163rd Maintenance Squadron. I'm an avionics maintainer. Just got back from tech school. Still in the FTD right now. Got a couple more months to go. And my whole life I always wanted to be a pilot. And I heard about the Aero Club, so I literally just dropped in today to talk to Bob. So he said, "You're in luck. Tonight's our monthly meeting, so decided to come and meet you all." Thanks.
Welcome.
Welcome to the club and welcome to the safety meeting. This is the not so fun part of flying here. Yeah, you still have to do it. Aero Club manager. Talk.
Front center.
You see, I got an awful lot to talk about tonight. Not really. How many people signed up on the sheet for the tonight's muster? Can you? I'm going to pass it around again, and could you put after your name the number of people that are going to come to the Christmas party? That if you're going to come to Christmas party, so we can get a count. Because this is going to be December the 8th. We're looking at 2 weeks. Is that about right? 2 more weeks. And so I need a count around the 1st to get to the steakhouse. So if you can just take and I'll get back with you here. Put down after your name. It's already on there. Here's another one in case you lose that one. If you just put down the number of people that you're going to have there, I'd appreciate it. Let me just cover aircraft because we have some dire issues in regards to aircraft. The maintenance officer is gone for the week, and basically we're shut down for the holiday, especially for Thanksgiving. 5-7 is now at 100 hours, so we got to do a 100-hour inspection. That's going to take a week. We got 555, still got the wing spar with the crack in it. We're not sure yet what we're going to do. I've only gotten one bid. I'm still trying to get more bids so I can go to contracting and do the console for that. And 5-6 has 2 cylinders. Numbers 2 and 4 have been pulled with burnt valves, low compression. They're going back to the contractor in Oklahoma. They're going to be reworked, those 2 cylinders. It appears that 5-3 is running a little bit on the hot side. The valves are red. That's a good indication that it's either running too rich and it's burning the valves, but we also notice that the seats really aren't set right. So I have a narrow seat on one side and a thick seat on the other with a concave valve, and that should never have taken place with new valve seats and valve guides. So it's going to go back to the cylinder overhaul place and see what they can do with that.
How long is the 5.6 going to be down?
Have no idea. As soon as I get the cylinders shipped and as soon as I get them back, I can't give you an idea. So you're down to 1 airplane right now. I went in and canceled all the reservations on it. So there's not much we can do on that. I'm trying to find a ring compressor. I'm just going to have to get a box and just wrap up everything separately and stuff it with paper, and we'll ship the piston and the cylinders in a box separately. We got 2 cylinders we got to do, so I'm trying to find a compression or a ring compressor now so I can get it back in the cylinder. The 182, we're pulling the engine in December. It's on its last leg, and we're not going to send that out. Any flying with the 182 will be done locally. I don't want it to go out of the Los Angeles basin. Going north, and San Diego is going to be the furthest one because that engine already is at 2,360 hours. So we've only got a few more hours on that, and then that engine will be pulled and sent in for overhaul. States that you can get it done in 4 to 5 weeks. Migrating birds, I just mentioned we got the girl, she came in tonight. 2 weeks ago when I was in here getting gas, I left at dusk. Actually it was at the end of the month of October, going over to Riverside, and a flock of geese crossed over me at 500 feet, moving across the field parallel to 3-2. There was a C-17 in the pattern, and he was taking off, and I called the tower on it. They didn't see him. Luckily, he had more altitude than what was required. And then they crossed the runway, heading kind of on the north side, about where Alessandro is. So around dusk, if you're flying dusk and not at night where it's dark, just be very aware that we're getting a lot of migratory birds that are moving through the area. And a goose going through a windshield was going to kill you. I don't care what kind of an airplane you're in, it will kill you. The Christmas party, we're working on a few grab bag things. Maybe we'll have some stuff for you. So get your reservations into Roger or I if you're going. I need to know the number of people. We'll be at the Pinnacle Peak Steakhouse. We had a good time last year, a lot of fun. And by 9 o'clock, we should be on our way home. So we'll start at 6, order about 6:30 or so when people start getting there. And then probably get out of there by 9 o'clock, and that's on Saturday, December the 8th. Should have a good time. Don't forget on the gas hose, it's showing a lot of scuff marks because we're pulling it across the stop. Pick it up, put the handle back up, grab the hose, and walk it back in. I'm going to take off that extra length of hose and get back to the small standard again. We need to save that hose as best we can in regards to trying to keep it from getting scuffed and pulling it all the way out of the reel. So give a little bit of thought in regards to refueling and try and save the equipment. Keep the aircraft as clean as you can. Some of the 6.9 Romeos pump a little bit of oil. The 182s pump a little oil. The belly looks pretty bad on the 182. So even though it's a rental airplane, you're a club member and it kind of helps us out. I don't have time to go out and clean them either anymore, and neither does David G. So it's up to you as an individual renting the airplanes to keep them clean. And that's about all I have until the end of the meeting when I probably think about something else.
Oh, God. Just kidding?
Oh, just a second, I forgot. George?
Just teases.
Done?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Roger does a good combo.
Huh? What?
I said you do a good combo act.
Oh. Yeah, I know. I used to watch that all the time. Okay. Thanks, Bob. Again, this is your flight instructors, just in case you don't know. Jerry, Alex, John Law. You gotta remember that. It's Law.
L-A-W.
L-A-W, yeah. Tony Costanza and Fred Zoltz. And he does the T-34s. So any one of those people can do that. John lives just right off base, right over here, so he's actually available anytime that somebody needs to fly with him. He's a lot more available than just about anybody right now. And Tony's going to be the one that does a lot of the phase checks too on the students. So he's going to be doing that along with John. Okay. We kind of run over the SOPs just a little bit. Right now, we're in Chapter 4, which is student pilot procedures. However, some of you guys who are not students, some of the stuff is very advisable to kind of take in consideration some of these things. 4.8 in written exams, the students have to take a pre-solo exam. And most of you students already know that, or the ones who've recently been students. The individual makes and model aircraft for each airplane you want to solo in. Aero Club local area procedures are also required for unsupervised solo. A stage exam before completion of each ground training stage. And this is just, like I said, most of this is for the students. You have a student pre-solo cross country. And flight restrictions. Beside those specifically stated in your records and agreed upon by you and your instructor, the following will apply. and you can see the list down there below for a student pilot. Some of you guys who fly minimally, like Mr. Youngblood and a couple other Kevin, and some of you guys who don't fly a lot, you might want to take in consideration some of these limitations down here for students too.
It's my ability.
I know. What's that?
My ability?
Your ability, yeah, exactly. If you feel that you're uncomfortable with what a pilot can do in an airplane, then don't do it. You know, just go by, if you go by the students, you know, like you did when you were a student, then just stick with that. If you start flying a whole lot more, then of course, you know, you can start getting back to your normal area. But any questions for this? Okay. All right. Tonight, what we're going to be doing is going real quick. This is really quick. The purpose of a safety meeting is to kind of make you aware of things, and that's what we're going to try to do tonight. How many have read the latest PIF? I know you guys who flew today did, and some of you, and it talks about icing. One of the things that I looked at, what I do is I get this newsletter called the Callback, which is NASA's aviation safety reporting system. And what it is that it is the magic carpet form that you can fill out. Some people call it the get out of jail card. If you make an error or a mistake in your flying and you think that the FAA is going to turn you in for something, then you can fill out this form and turn it into NASA. And in a way, as long as it's not something where you ended up in a real accident or killed somebody or something like that, usually what it does is that it protects you from being written up by the FAA. The whole idea behind the whole program is for safety, and what they do is they produce this newsletter once a month, and they have the latest incidences that people have gone through in what they have reported. Some of these are not, some of them, the situation, the pilot got killed. So it's kind of one of those kind of things where you just have to be very, you know, when you read this thing, it's very sobering, because oftentimes the pilot is the one that's obviously turning in these things. Many of these here, on this particular one here, was on icing, and they've got, you know, some of them where they talk about a PA-28, which is a Pilatus, I believe it is, or what is that?
Piper.
Oh, it's a Piper? Oh, okay. All right.
140
that
horsepower.
shows I know about Pipers. I don't fly Pipers.
140 horsepower.
Okay, and they have several of these. They got one in here as a report of PA-28 involved in an accident. NTSB cited icing conditions and improper in-flight planning as probable cause. And of course, they go into detail as to what happened. And the other one, PA-28, it was icing conditions. Again, the pilot said, "I just didn't appreciate how fast ice could form." The pilot who submitted the report to NASA, he planned to avoid icing and flew his PA-28 that was equipped with dual GPS, satellite weather, and electronic approach plates. What the pilot did not include in his planning was an understanding of how rapidly ice can build up and how, without adequate training, complex equipment can become a distraction. Basically, what happened to him, he got so looking at his electronic forms that he had that he completely ignored what was going on the outside of the airplane until he felt the airplane feeling funny, and he looks and hears you know, like 2-3 inches of ice on his wing, on both wings. So he almost died, but he was able to come out of it. Cessna 182, same thing. In this particular situation, it was carburetor icing. Who was it that, it wasn't you, Brandon, was it, that had the carburetor icing and went and landed at Santa Barbara? Okay, yeah, I can't remember who it was.
Another student. I don't remember his name.
Yeah, we had a student that the engine was acting funny, and he
Put it down at Camarillo.
and actually, it was, yeah, in Camarillo, and we finally figured out it was carburetor icing, what the problem was, but he did the right thing as a student. You know, he didn't know what was going on, so he just put the airplane down. And that's
clear air too.
yeah, and it was clear air, yeah. Another one, 182 pilot, NTSB report recounts on another 182, experienced carburetor icing, but was unable to restart the engine and wound up losing the airplane in a tree. What happened was that he let the NTSB report says that the guy just let the thing go. He did not pull the fuel heat. He just kind of let it fly until he realized what was going on. He pulled the fuel heat, but it was too late. The engine quit, and he couldn't restart it, and he crashed in some trees. He did walk away from it, obviously, because he turned in the report. But it goes on and on with different situations like this. What we're going to do is real quick tonight is we're going to talk about pre-flight weather planning, and this is just some of them. This is just some of the official places you can go just before you go out to fly. Most of you guys that come out here and fly, usually it's local, and for the most part, I know like the T-34s, they just go up and fly, you know, out there, do formation flying, but you don't necessarily go anywhere particularly. But there is always that, you know, you always want to check the weather. Everybody does, even the T-34 pilots, even if they're flying locally. There are some of you that do want to fly long distances and do so. And of course now this stuff really becomes important to look at, because now, you know, the chances of you running in any kind of weather increases. Here in Southern California, we don't have the weather like we have back east or the Middle West for the most part. But we all know, for any of us that's lived here in California for any length of time, there is a certain part of the season that it can get pretty bad here. We can actually have icing here. We can have even mini tornadoes. Nothing big, but enough to where if you're flying in a Cessna 172, it could do some major damage. So anyhow, flight service weather briefing is pretty common, and everybody should, at least most of you who are students and already pilots, you know, you can call weather brief, you know, for the flight service station. There are some other areas that you can look at for general aviation, and pretty much, you know, there's some good sources, and of course, most of you who belong to AOPA, who here belongs to the AOPA? Okay, yeah, a good number of you. So, you know, hello. AOPA is a good outfit to belong to. You know, when I know that many years ago when I first joined them way back, I almost started to say the year, but I won't. I had somebody tell me, oh, don't join them because all they are is just an insurance to get and rope you in on, you know, things like that. But actually, I did join them, and I'm actually glad I did, because there was a lot of times where AOPA came out with some things that really made flying, you know, a lot easier, and the information that you get from them is pretty good, and especially today online. When you get online, they've got all the stuff that I'm going to show you here. Okay. The simple rule of thumb, as you work through the weather, you know, when you're flying from point A to point B, the thing you want to do is know what you're getting yourself into. These guys here with the icing, a lot of these guys took off and had no clue what they were doing. However, you also have, I got reports as a safety officer I get where people were told by the forecaster that the icing was not going to be bad. So they took off and it turned out to be bad. So there are a lot of things you can do to help yourself to be able to avoid situations like that. The more doubtful the weather, the more information you need. Common sense. I mean, if you're going to fly from here to Northern California, you know, you need to get the weather, especially right now. Before you leave home, it starts right there. Turn on the Weather Channel. Start watching while you're getting dressed, eating breakfast or dinner, whatever you're doing. Start your weather checking right there at home. And that is one of the biggest, and probably, I'm not going to say accurate, but it's probably going to give you a heads up for the most part. So home is one of the best places. The Weather Channel, you also have other FAA approved sources too that you can do it at home. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. How many use duots here? I know Brandon does.
Yeah.
Ken. Yeah. That's there. You can actually get a printed version of the Flight Service Station briefing package, and you can get a standard briefing on duots. It's free and accessible. You can also do it through AOPA. AOPA can connect you to just about any kind of weather source. Duots is a good source. How many do it at home and then redo it again out at the base when they get here? You should, you know, because if the weather's changing a lot, then you want to be getting the latest weather. Aviation Digital Data Service. You should take a look at the wealth of weather information and resource available online via the Aviation Digital Data Service. It's a joint effort of the NOAA Forecast System Laboratory, in-car, research applications, and so forth. And that's all just a bunch of words, but basically you can just go online and you've got the online site right there. It combines information from National Weather Services, aviation observations, and forecast. That's another way that you can do that. This is all stuff that you can do before you leave home. Okay. On that site right there, you can get this information here. And you can get METARs, TAFs, AirMets, SIGMETs, the ADS Java tool, can zoom in on specific parts of the country. One of the best reporting that you can get on weather is the pilot report. If you can get pilot reports, now you're getting somebody who's right there in the middle of it. This thing here will zoom in on a specific part of the country. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. It gives you hazard reporting, icing, turbulence, sky, and weather, and so forth. It is a real good tool to use to get in, and you can actually do your route and all this, and it can actually give you all your weather and the routing that you're on.
It's really cool. It does some really neat stuff.
Yeah. And if you could, give out some more information on that. For the National Convective Weather Forecast, NCWF, the latest convection diagnostics. This is the kind of stuff that gives you information in the long run. Some of this stuff will give you the information that you can get that will keep you from what happened to these guys here. You can call the FA or the Flight Service Station, and you can talk to the controller, and he'll tell you what their projection is. But a lot of information that you can get off this stuff right here, knowing how the winds are blowing. Bob has talked about it a few times at the Aero Club to some of the people, but you can get some idea if you think you should be flying this flight or not. Even though the controller tells you, oh, icing is going to be high, and at your level, it's not going to be bad. But is he telling you something that maybe if you look at it and follow what it's telling you, you might be thinking, wait a minute, now I'm not so sure about this. Now, obviously, if you can get a pilot's report, that'd be the best, because now that's him telling you. Also, too, another thing you got to remember, when you get this information and you call it into the controller, what's the time frame between the time you get to that point and when you take off and got the briefing? What's going to change? This type of information that's right here will tell you that. It'll kind of give you an idea, another couple of hours when I get up there to, Fresno, is it going to be what the controller just told me? Now, I know they give a forecast, but, should you believe it? I mean, well, that's your call. That's, again, is what we were talking about earlier. What level are you at as far as experience? If you're a student or a young pilot that's new, and when I say young, I don't necessarily mean age. Young in terms of flying as a pilot. Do you know for a fact what that guy told you on the phone indeed is going to be the way he says? If you learn how to read these things and how to look at this stuff, which basically there's a lot of information to teach you how to read this stuff. And believe me, it can help you make a decision on your flying. Enough said. ADS also includes a flight path tool that helps pilots visualize high-resolution weather products together with winds aloft and pilot reports. And you've used this, right? I don't know if you've used this part or not.
The ADS deal with the little Java thing that's got, it gives you a really good graphical view of what's happening.
Yeah.
And you can move yourself around, change your flight path. So it's pretty neat.
Any questions so far? Okay, and then of course there's the good old Flight Service Station. You just call weather brief, tell them what you're, where you're going, when you're going, what altitude, all that, and then they give you a briefing. Well, here's some of the things that you should be doing. First off, you got 1-800 weather brief. When you call, one of the things that that first paragraph is more when they had more flight service stations. Right now, here I think you're talking to Albuquerque, I think it is, which is one big.
Prescott.
That's right. It's Prescott. I was thinking Albuquerque, but yeah, Prescott is who you're talking to. For you younger people, newer pilots, flight service stations used to be everywhere, and we had one right here in Riverside. And when you used to call, you would be talking to supposedly the closest flight service station to you. Now, if you use your cell phone, you had to tell them where you're at, because your cell phone may call a whole different, place. Now, of course, when you call 1-800-WEATHER BRIEF, you're talking to Prescott, and you do have to tell them every time where you're flying out of. And
However, if Prescott is busy, you may be talking to Seattle.
That's true.
And
That's
so,
true.
You're going to get different people depending upon how busy and what time of day it is at that particular center. It will automatically transfer.
Okay, one of the things that you can do is that, and this is the things you should be doing when you call the flight service station. Do you know what you need so you can request the right briefing package? You can do, now there is an Outlook, and I was told today that that's not around, and yet everywhere I've looked it says there still is an Outlook report that you can get. An Outlook is the long range, okay? A standard briefing, and then you got the abbreviated briefing. Okay, all the stuff that I was showing you before, when you watch the Weather Channel, and you go into DUATs, before you even leave your house, or at least when you get to the place where you're flying out of, you're arming yourself with as much information you can possibly get on what the weather is. Then you call flight service station, because you're going to be filing a flight plan with them anyhow, at least you should. And they'll be wanting to know what kind of briefing you want. If you think you've gotten the information you need, then do an abbreviated. But actually, if you're wise, you probably want to do a standard briefing anyhow. And because you're now armed with that stuff that you watched on the way in, you now can make a more intelligent decision on your flying when you get the briefing from the flight service station. You see what I'm trying to say? In other words, you've got all this information behind you, and one of the things I thought about doing tonight was showing you this, which we would never have time to do it, but the AOPA has a video, and I highly recommend it for those of you guys who have AOPA. This video is of a guy who took off from Boise, Idaho, and he was flying down to Park City in Utah. When he took off, the weather was absolutely perfectly clear, except for Park City. Park City, it was like 1 mile visibility with snow, and the clouds were like 500 feet. This guy, he kept booking, he kept going, and he kept calling weather, and he kept calling the flight service station, and they kept telling him that it was getting worse. As a matter of fact, the scene was even going lower. And he kept telling the flight service that, oh yeah, ATC, yeah, I'm going to continue on. And use VFR. And one of the factors involved with when he did crash was that the euphoria of flying for almost 2 hours in absolute perfectly clear weather probably led him to think that he was going to be able to do this. But he went down, and they literally, it's a magnificent video. It's absolutely fascinating, because they can actually track every minute of this guy flying his Mooney, is what it was. And the guy kept getting lower and lower, and then he said, okay, I'm a little bit in the clouds, but I'm going to still go to the next point. And okay, I made it to this point, I'm going to make it to the next point. And he kept telling ATC this, and you could hear it. They actually have the recordings and everything from the tapes. And he just kept pushing, and finally they lost sight of him, and because he was below their radar, but the radar every once in a great while would pick up the airplane. And when they pick up the airplane, the guy was flying 100 feet off the ground over the freeway. You know, until finally he just, you know, he tried to turn the airplane around, because I guess all of a sudden he decided, oh, I can't make it to my destination. And when he turned the airplane around, he came back, crashed into a tree not too far from Park City, just off the freeway, about 200 yards. But I mean, that was a perfect example of totally ignoring anything that the weather people were telling him, absolutely ignoring it. And he obviously, of course, didn't seem to think that the weather had anything to do with his flying, but it's a long video, and I wish I could show it, because the video is a good 45 minutes long, because it takes the flight and then it narrows down to the last 30 minutes of the flight. Okay, do be honest with yourself and with the briefer. This guy was not honest at all. He thought he was going to make it. If you are not used to flying in weather, then tell the briefer that. Tell yourself that. There's been a lot of people that pretend like they're, I don't know what they are, airline pilots, pretend like they know everything. You even have airline pilots that crash in situations like this. Several of these crashes, these guys were either Air Force pilots or Navy pilots or airline pilots. And you get them into one of these airplanes, and I guess they forget that they don't have the same equipment in these airplanes like you got in a DC-10 or F-16. Do let the flight service specialist know if you are new to the area or unfamiliar with typical weather patterns. If you're going back east, or you're from back east, like Texas, although I know that's not east, but that's the middle of the United States, and come out here to California and you're not familiar with it, then you need to let the controller know that. Ask questions, speak up. If you don't understand something, you let them know. You've got to be aggressive. How many remember it was a safety meeting, and I think it was September, the one where we talked about the pilot in command. You know, you are the pilot in command. The controller's there to help you. And the controller is not some kind of almighty authority. You are the pilot in command of your airplane, and you know your airplane most better than the controller does. So, you know, you need to ask questions. If you have any doubt whatsoever, then you ask the question. Do be sure to get all the weather information you need. So, if you're flying from here up to Redding in Northern California, don't just get the weather up to Sacramento and figure, okay, from Sacramento to Redding, which is about another 200 miles or so, actually it's a little less than that, 150 miles, it should be the same. No, don't sit there and just think that that's what it's going to be. No, you get the weather all the way to Redding, not just halfway or partway up. Don't assume that the weather is going to be better at the place you're going to. One of these here, on an accident, the guy called up relatives, and they all said, oh, it's clear up here. The problem was that in between there and where he was going, it wasn't clear. And he ended up messing up an airplane over it. So, and don't just believe what a relative tells you. There's nothing wrong with calling and talking. If you know somebody at your point B, go ahead and talk to them. Find out what the weather is like. But understand, by the time you get there, the weather can change quite a bit. keep thinking that the weather will change. Okay, that right there, that's a, let's see, I got it right here. Well, I had it right here. All this information came out of a little booklet where you can get it right there on that site, which it's called the Weather Decision Making. And it's an excellent, excellent manual. It really is. It breaks down every little detail of what I talked about. There's a whole lot more. I just did one little part of it. It even has a risk management decision table at the end. And that's one of the things that in Civil Air Patrol and in the Air Force does risk management charts as what's the risk of making this flight. This booklet in the back has one of those risk management charts for general aviation. And it's an excellent book if you're going to, especially if you're going to be doing any cross-country type flying, which I know several of you in here do. Even for local flying, there are times when you come out here, and I know that you guys, have come out here during the weekend when it was raining, out here like crazy. And of course, you know that you wouldn't be doing any flying necessarily when that happens. But, if you're going anywhere in a distance that's 50 miles or so, 75 miles from the base here, you may want to still be checking the weather. You may not have to go into the same extensiveness that we did here like you would on a cross country, but there's nothing wrong with that. If you just do it just even as a precautionary and learn how to do it, the more you check the weather and do that stuff, the more natural it just comes to you. And after a while, I know like in the Air Force, it's just automatic. You just check the weather and and after a while you just get good at it. You just look at it and go, okay, this is what's going on. So, there's nothing wrong with practicing with it. Any questions?
Hey, Roger.
Yeah.
Since I was a weather observer assistant forecaster.
Yeah, you were.
I can say that the weather is updated on a minimum for forecast every 6 hours. The weather is updated hourly, and if there's a special criteria, then it's updated whatever that means.
Yeah.
The first thing that happens when an airplane crashes, the first thing they always get is weather. They want to make sure that the weather that we forecasted was correct, and it's correct about 98% of the time.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for any kind of weather, even if you want to go hiking or camping and stuff, the best weather to look at is going to be the aviation weather, because that's what's up in the air flying. And there's all kinds of apps. You can get apps on your phone for that gives you aviation weather. So when you get to the airport, you can just pull up on your smartphone what the METAR is at your airport you're at, and what the METAR and the TAF is at the airport you're going to, and you can get on your phone. And it's true. From the time you leave your house to the time you get to the airport, that weather's already outdated. And if you're at home and you want to do your own research, you can always go online, and you can use Weather Unisys. And Weather Unisys is the actual corporation that came out with the database, or came out with the workings for NEXRAD.
Okay.
So in the aviation field or in the weather field, we would always look up on one of our websites, besides pulling up weather from different offices, was always go on Weather Unisys, because they had all the raw data charts and everything else, and that's what we used to forecast off of. And general public is open to Unisys weather.
Actually, they do talk about that in here. They actually talk about that in the article. I'm glad you brought that up, because I had totally forgot about. Obviously, this right here is one of the best things you can use, especially if you're driving. Especially like Malcolm, who has hours and hours of driving on the freeway and getting stuck in traffic.
Because I'm a weather geek, I've got like 6 different weather things on my phone. So.
Yeah. And it's funny how you brought up about, like, even if you're going to go picnicking or something like that. You know, I always tell my family, I said, well, I'll check the aviation weather because that's the accurate. I mean,
It's updated hourly, and it's more
exactly,
accurate because
yeah.
you're dealing with millions of dollars of airplane and people's lives.
Yes, yeah. And you know, we joke around a little bit about, I know I do at home with the Weather Channel, and I don't, you know, I don't trust the Weather Channel more than I can turn on the TV, you know, which I don't. My wife does, but it is something that is worth sitting there and watching and seeing, because at least when they show that weather picture of the weather radar, you can at least look at it and go, hey, you know, I'm flying right through the middle of that. Maybe we better check a little closer. Bob and I, when we went down to Texas on a couple of the flights for the T-34, that's what we did do. We turned on the TV in the motel room and watched the Weather Channel that morning. Now, even though it was inaccurate, it still had a generalized view of what was going on with the weather area. Because when, like I said, when they show that weather radar, it does show where the thunderstorms are at. And sure enough, when we left Amarillo, they were all over the place out there, just as it showed on there. Any more questions?
Not only a question, but you started this with icing. There's a really interesting icing video that NASA did. It's a 23-minute video, NASA tailplane icing.
Yes, I have
really
seen
good
that.
video.
Yes. A lot of those type of things, it's kind of fun to just do that and just show that. We ought to have sometime just a night where we just watch videos like that. And anybody that has those videos too. Where are we at as far as the runway closure thing?
They're working on the south in the morning, and the NOTAM comes out tomorrow morning.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because if you're not aware, they are doing, well, they're at digging holes is what they're doing on our runway. And
Ours will be down on the 26th. We think it's going to be closed on the 26th for about a week.
yeah, according to this, Murphy, who's he's the guy in charge of ATC here on this base. He's also a member of the club. He's got here the 26th through the 30th of November, and so expect runway 3012 or 32 and 14. So you'll probably have to do an intersection takeoff. He says Bravo here, but I heard that there might be a change on that.
You can take off on Bravo?
No, you taxi on Bravo, and then you go out to runway 32. It's a Bravo takeoff. No, in the Air Force, that's what you call it. In the Air, we used to do it. We used to do a Bravo takeoff. That's what you call it. So keep your eyes open for any NOTAMs on that. And of course, the tower should tell you what's going on. Oh yeah, one other thing, I don't know, they have new flight plans for them now. FAA is on November 15, 2012, a new ICAO flight plan will be...
That's ICAO, not local.
Yeah, that's ICAO, yeah. When I do the invoices, one of the things I noticed that nobody's marking oil. I can't believe that a T-34 would be flying, 100 hours and only 1 quart of oil is used. It's got to be recorded. The problem with the oil is that the oil is accountable. It's part of our inventory, and so what we're doing is that we're keeping track of it. And when we get audited, they kind of go in there and raise their eyebrow, wondering where am I putting this oil at? So
I can't do a correct cost analysis per airplane either.
yeah, and that's the biggie right there is the cost analysis on the airplane itself. We need to know how much oil is being used for the airplanes. I know it's so easy to just put the oil in and then just, you know, forget about it. You know, you don't remember. There's no place there to mark it down necessarily on the sheet. There is a place to mark it in the utilization log, but a lot of the times you guys, you know, especially in the T-34s, you're out there cleaning it up, and by the time you come inside and do the invoice, you've forgotten all about it. If you get the fuel, fine, that's fine, but we need to also know about the oil. And try not to put down half a quart. If you put a half a quart in, put down 1. I've had a couple of people just put down 0.5. And I'm going, wait a minute, whoa. You know, just put down 1. I know in the 141 we did that too. If you used just a quarter of a quart, you put down 1 quart. So, you know, just make it a quart. Make it easier.
If you're only putting in a half a quart, you're not filling it properly. If it holds 10 quarts and it gets down to 9, you add a quart, but you don't put in a half a quart because it reads 9.5. All you're doing is pumping it over the side.
November safety gram, it's up. Expect it. Flying VFR into IFR is what it's about.
Next meeting.
And we did that. We've done several meetings on that very subject right there. Especially here in Southern California in the summertime with the smog. Although we didn't have that much smog this year, so we did pretty good. That's George flying the T-34 right there, you know, in case you didn't recognize him. I don't know who that is. Okay, next meeting's 18 December. That's exactly 1 week prior to Christmas. I know that some of you are not going to be here, but, you know, Mr.